Hello, and a warm welcome to the Reform Party podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Councillor Mandy Clare. Mandy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Mandy Clare. I'm a local councillor in Cheshire West and Chester, and I'm now a Reform councillor, and we have a small group of 2 Reform councillors in Cheshire West and Chester now, pleased to say.
I should say that we're recording this on Friday the 2nd of May, which if anybody knows is a momentous date because it's the day after Reform won their first by-election victory. Mandy, I know, has been very busy down at Runcorn for the last several weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I've been there for a few weeks, and I've been trying to go sort of 2 or 3 times at least a week. And then the last few days I've been there every day.
You said you'd been doing so much walking you'd hurt your leg. Is that better now?
I had to ice my ankle yesterday afternoon, stopped for an hour, elevated it. I got the pub to provide me with some ice and a cloth. I shoved it on my ankle. It really helped, actually, and then I was able to carry on. I
have not done anything like as much work on it as you have. I went down yesterday, so there was about 4 or 5 of us. We formed a little team and went out, and we were, going around checking that people had voted, etc., etc. So we felt at the time that perhaps we hadn't contributed that much, but then since then, on the little WhatsApp group that we created, everybody's saying that we did it. Absolutely.
We can all claim credit now. It's great,
maybe we did. You don't know.
No. Nobody knows, but I heard that Nigel was out for 8 hours straight yesterday, so that can't have done any harm either. I don't know. I was out on one of the knocks that Nigel went out on. It was in one of the social housing, like council house estates, and he got mobbed by the kids on that estate. They loved him, and there was a massive buzz, around his presence there. And the fact that we had that on the one hand, and on the other hand, Starmer didn't turn up to support Karen Shaw at all.
Well, and you have to wonder whether had he turned up, whether it would have done any good. It might have been counterproductive. We had a lovely little kid who'd come all the way through, I think, on the bus from York, and he was 17 years old. And he came out and he was fantastic going around the houses and so on. But he's what he said right from the start is, I want my picture taken with Nigel. And so we tried during the day to get it. And I had to go in the end, and I wasn't sure whether he got his. However, he sent through some photographs of him with Nigel, him with Sarah, him with Zia Yusuf. So he'd got a full house.
He was, I bet he was made up.
I mean, it was I don't know how you must be overjoyed, or you not? It was a fantastic day.
It's just phenomenal. I can't even describe to you how nail-biting it was. The atmosphere was kind of jubilant, when when the polls had closed and everybody got back together again. There was a few of us got back together again. Obviously, the core team were in the count themselves. And so the rest of us are just watching it on the telly, the same as everybody else. But everyone was jabbering away. There was just an electric atmosphere. Everybody was excited, and it was kind of looking hopeful and positive. And then it took a downturn, didn't it? We didn't know that it was Reform that had requested the recount for quite a long time. Everyone assumed it had gone the other way, and it was Labour that had the 4 votes in their favour. We didn't know, and so heads were in hands. And then obviously we had that dramatic turnaround. We learned that it was actually our side that had requested the recount. And then we had the recount, and everybody's thinking, well, if that goes against us, we're going to have to ask for or Labour or whatever. It could end up being recount ping pong. How long could that go on for? So everybody kind of went home and ended up watching it on our own individually. I can't even describe to you. It's so well deserved by Sarah. I think she's going to be a fantastic MP. And so well deserved by the team, because I don't think there's anything more they could have done. They fought an absolutely phenomenal campaign, start to finish.
I mean, it was very much a head office campaign, wasn't it? Because quite as soon as the election more or less was called, head office got involved, and John Burns, I think it was, as the campaign manager, kind of took over. But it says a lot for us that we have people of that calibre who can come and run successful elections, and that's good for the future, isn't it?
It really is, and I think that the level of involvement from the top team as well. You know, Zia was there a few times, Nigel was there a few times. We had Richard,
Yes.
Richard Tice. I think who else, and then just the team I found were open to other people's ideas or experience of campaigning as well. It wasn't like a fixed thing. There was a dynamism about it as well. So I just think that we're at an exciting stage of our development and a dynamic team, and it's a fantastic result. We've overturned, it was like a nearly 15,000 majority, and in such a short space from Labour winning what they described as a landslide in the general election. It wasn't really, was it? It was despondency that enabled them to kind of surge ahead. It was a dissatisfaction with the Tories that enabled them to surge ahead in the way that they did. And there was a really low turnout, wasn't there, for that election? But it was sold as if it was a landslide. They had this huge mandate and they've thrown it away in such a short space of time, you know. And it feels like we've got such a sharp contrast with the energy and the enthusiasm we've got, not just within our team, but in terms of the reception that we've had from the public as well. I mean, I can't imagine that Labour had anything they could describe as enthusiasm on the doors, and if people went out and voted for them out of loyalty, it will have been through gritted teeth, I would imagine, at this stage.
Yes, we certainly had all the energy and all the momentum. I think that was obvious even the few times I was down.
Yeah. It's been great, and I think having that campaign base as well, right in the centre of the shopping city, so it was very visible and people could pop in anytime and ask questions and offer to get involved. And we had Jamie front of house welcoming everybody in as well. It's just had a really good community feel about it. It feels as if we're starting as we mean to go on with that. You know, it's a genuine thing.
And I think we learned quite a lot. I mean, one of the things people probably don't realise about an election like that is that Labour, of course, had done it before. So Labour would have a data going back decades on all the houses, who voted for them, who didn't vote for them. So they would have had a fantastic start, really. We were going into it almost blind. We had to do it from the ground up, if you like.
Yeah, also, I just can't believe it was that few votes that were in it. But everybody said all the way through, it's impossible to call. It's so close. But you couldn't write that,
and yet Labour were
you?
3-1 at the bookies. So we were the favourites, which always worried me.
Well, yeah, but that changed last night, didn't it? There was a certain point in the evening. I think that's when the mood dipped. Someone came over and said, "Oh, we've been put second favourites. We've been demoted." I was like, "Oh, really?" Yeah, and then everything changed. The whole dynamic of it changed. The mood dropped. Everyone's head went down a bit, and it was like, "Oh no!" And then everyone was watching the team on GB News, watching our team to see if they looked happy, stressed. You know, we're trying to read what was happening in the room, really, from that distance. But yeah,
absolutely
incredible result.
And
yeah,
I mean, it all worked out in the end. That was had a happy ending. The story. What do you think it means having this, having won this election for reform more generally in terms of our progress over the next couple of years?
There's no two ways about it. It was really important, this one, wasn't it? All eyes were on this, really. And what Mike Amesbury, how he'd behaved, it kind of crystallised the disappointment with Labour, with a whole number of different things and promises that they've reneged on, principles that they've sold out. You know, that was kind of like
it was like a metaphor for the whole thing, wasn't it?
It's incredible.
Especially the punching the constituent.
The
There's something about punching a constituent that kind of says it all, isn't there?
I don't know what to say about that, but it has started this wave, which is going to become a tsunami. I think this is the turning point, and we knew that. So all pressure was on that team, that campaign team in Runcorn, for reform to make this happen and to get us that win. Everybody's been conscious of how important this has been, you know, as a signal to the rest of the country that they can put their confidence in reform and that we'll deliver, you know. So yeah. And for Labour, I just can't even imagine what's going through their minds today, you know, and how they're feeling, because they've not looked confident, have they, throughout this campaign? I don't think Karen has looked confident or comfortable at any point. And they sent Angela Rayner over. It seems to just make things worse, you know. So
yeah.
I'm just delighted. I'm just delighted because obviously I'm a local councillor in Cheshire West and Chester, where Karen Shaw is or was deputy leader. I don't know whether she'll step back up now or what the plan is. We've got a full council meeting in mid-May. I tend to be a bit of a target within those meetings because, as you know, I've been quite outspoken on things that are hostile areas for Labour. They've blocked debate on women's rights, child safeguarding around Pride for events and things like that. And so I wasn't really looking forward to mid-May. I thought, I'm going to get roasted because I've joined Reform and they will be dying to say, we always said she was a right-wing bigot. And I think it's going to be a very different meeting.
Well, it is different, isn't it? Because once we start to win elections like this and so on, it's much harder for people to say, oh, they're a bunch of right-wing bigots. Are you really saying that the majority of the electorate are a bunch of right-wing bigots? Because that's what you're saying. It's not.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. It's such an insult to people, isn't it? You know, those kids that we go out and meet who are so enthusiastic about Nigel Farage and about Reform, they need something to hope and believe in. You have to trust your electorate, don't you, to a certain degree, you know, that they know what they want. And sometimes this thing about media training, where everybody's been media trained to death within politics, to the extent where they don't ever ask a question with a straight answer. I think people are tired of it. I think people have seen so much of that. And what they get with Reform seems fresh and different because it is. It genuinely is. So, and it's got, I think it's had that cut through for that reason. We're popular for a reason, right. You know. So.
Okay, let's go. Moving back to your problems, because you sent me a bit of film the other day of a woman councillor live streaming you and threatening you verbally at a council meeting. Is that I haven't misunderstood.
Right, so in 2023 in the local elections, I was already a councillor and I stood for re-election. So I was first elected as a Labour councillor. I left Labour after 3 years and became independent. And we put this independent group together. And I think we had 19 candidates, I think that's right, for 20 places. I can't remember the exact numbers, but anyway, there was 15 places on the town council in Winsford, which is a very working class, traditional Labour loyal town. And we got every seat apart from one. We actually, and most of those we took off Labour. So that was quite a shock to the system for them. And we also managed to get 3 of the 7 borough seats for our independents as well. So I was re-elected for my second term as an independent with a bigger majority than I'd had as a Labour councillor in a traditionally Labour seat. So that kind of gave us an indication of the level of dissatisfaction within working class communities and their appetite for just someone offering something common sense and to actually, you know, put the community first and people's everyday concerns first, which is something Labour's supposed to do that they don't do. So one of these councillors that we got elected, we had to recruit in a hurry. And I think probably Reform's been through a similar sort of a cycle with that. We didn't have time to vet people properly. We didn't have time to really prepare and train people properly for the roles that they were going into. And Labour got into the heads of some of our candidates, newly elected candidates, and told them that I was transphobic and a bigot. and they believed it.
Right.
And it split our group. So, and one of the candidates who was most vocal in criticising me and doing the name calling online was this councillor Stella Mellor, who immediately, her first task when she was elected as a town councillor under our banner was to propose a Pride event be held in the town. So there hadn't been one before in the town because there's a massive one in Chester every year, which the council was putting a lot of resources into supporting. But there started a trend, I don't know if you noticed this, of Pride events springing up in the smaller towns within boroughs. Everyone wanted one of their own. So she spearheaded that within Winsford. But we had the first year I didn't attend it. I saw photographs of it. I saw some of the like drag queens that had got the kids up on stage dancing with them, and I thought, oh, I'm not sure about that. So I went along to the one the following year, and I gathered evidence. I went along. I wasn't there protesting with a placard or anything like that. I was just gathering evidence, having a look around to see what was going on, and not causing any trouble, but a lot of people by this stage knew what my concerns were around some of that agenda. So there was a bit of hostility towards me. But there was an act that was on the stage, which was a burlesque act, and it was a man who was in women's underwear with a clown face on the crotch of his knickers. No nice way of saying that. Burlesquing in front of children. And there was also a stall which was promoting double breast amputations and trans ideology to kids, and it had sexualized messages on it as well. And it was at child eye height, and it was all colourful, and glittery and very eye-catching for children, promoting these things. So I went, and I didn't confront the stall holders, but I did take some pictures, because unless you go along to these things and take pictures, there's never any evidence of what's happened. And there's all sorts of things happening at these events that people don't know about. And they're being normalised by the fact that they're being hosted and very often funded and promoted by local councils. So, as inclusive, So I did ask the MP candidate, as was at the time, Andrew Cooper, who's now the MP for Mid Cheshire for Labour. He was there. Dan Price was there, who was the Labour's recently elected Police and Crime Commissioner. So I raised it with a local sergeant who was there, who wasn't interested. He refused to have a look at the stall. And I also raised it with Andrew Cooper, MP, and Dan Price. And they walked away. Their aides were saying to them, and we've got them on camera, saying, just ignore her. And they walked away. And I said, well, shouldn't you be interested in coming to see this stall and see some of this content that's on this stall? And Andrew Cooper said to me that he was very disappointed with me. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, because you used to talk about poverty more, and now all you talk about is this. So I said, well, am I not allowed to talk about women's rights? Can I only talk about the things that you think I should be talking about? Can I not talk about child safeguarding? Oh, you can talk about what you want, but we're here to look at the stalls, and we're here to talk to people, and you're getting in the way of that. So I'm there as a local councillor. I've got serious child safeguarding concerns about what's happening at Pride, and I'm told I'm in the way. And so we got all of that on camera, and then after that, the police pulled me to one side, and they said that the stall holders had said that I'd said something abusive. And I said, well, I didn't. I haven't. I've taken photographs. I've not conversed with them. And they said, well, if you do it again, then you'll be arrested. And I said, well, I didn't do it in the first place, so I can't do it again because it didn't happen. Well, they're all saying that you did. So I said, well, I didn't. So, and all of that was captured on camera as well. Anyway, this councillor has footage of that conversation that I had with the police. And she said to me that in this meeting that we went to, I've been going to town council meetings ever since, and I've been emailing them, and I've been imploring them to have a look at their policies, their child safeguarding policy. Does it cover events? Are they supposed to be promoting an ideology as a publicly funded organisation? Can they please reconsider not booking that act that did that? And they decided they wanted to rebook him because he's agreed to wear something different, something more modest, and he's apologised profusely. But what I've been saying is, if someone gets that wrong in front of children once, really they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be near children, should they?
Contracted again. That should be the end of the conversation as far as that goes. And I've been asking them about the content of the stall as well, and they won't even put it on the agenda to discuss it. So I've been turning up to their meetings, and in the public speaking time, I've just been taking my 2 minutes or however much they give me to say, look, this is still an issue. It's not been resolved. Please don't rebook this act. Please don't have this stall there again. Please provide assurances to the public. And this most recent one, well, the last two that I've been to, have triggered outbursts from this councillor who has called me transphobic and bigoted and is obsessed with the fact that I get an allowance as a borough councillor for some strange reason. And And she live streamed in the last meeting, which was last week. She actually did this live stream, which I've put online because it's already out there. And in this live stream, she's accusing me of taking photographs of children, and accusing me of having been escorted off the site, Winsford Pride event, for taking photographs of children. So A, I took photographs of a stall, not of children, and B, the police didn't escort me anywhere. They did take me to one side and threaten me with arrest.
Can I speak now? I'd like to offer an apology, actually. I'm going to go live on this so no one can diss my words. I want to apologise for saying that you were escorted off the Pride event because you were in Andrew Cooper's face. Because you weren't. You were escorted, and this is live, so you can't mix my words. You were escorted off by the police for taking pictures of children. And I've got the video, and this is live now, and I will post the video of it from last year later. I have the video of it, so it will be on later. Well, I don't care. I'm live now. I have got a video of Mandy Clare and Simon Boone being escorted off the Pride event from last year, like the gentleman said. Thank you. There we go. Have you? I hope you do too. I hope you both do. I hope you both do.
You've just libelled me.
I've got the video. I've got the video.
Please sit down.
Well, I'm going to post it now anyway.
That's the end of the open
Okay, so just to clarify as well, Chair Fans, I wasn't escorted off.
You were spoken to.
Thank you very much. Clarified.
Well, they say that the stallholders said that I had said something out of turn, but I didn't. I just said, hi, how are you doing? Just having a look at what, at your content. Is it okay if I film? They said they didn't want me to film, so I said that's fine. So I just took some pictures of the content, so that I had some evidence. Because the police I'd asked him to come and have a look at the stall, and he'd refused. He said, I'm not concerned with it. I'm not going to come and look at it. And I have witnesses that were stood and heard him say that as well. And there were witnesses with me the whole time that I was on the stall who can also confirm I didn't say anything untoward. So I was threatened with arrest on the basis of hearsay, no evidence, by an officer who'd refused to investigate a child safeguarding concern I'd raised.
Am I right in saying you said that Stella Miller is an independent councillor?
Yeah, so she was elected under our banner because we branded it up. We weren't a registered party. We were independents,
right?
But we used the brand Winsford Salt of the Earth, and used the colour like orange because it's kind of the salt in the salt mines in Winsford is kind of like a rusty colour. So that was our brand, and we became recognisable. We had like a mini revolution in Winsford with that brand. And because she was a town councillor, she was able to put that brand on her ballot paper. So she was elected as a Winsford Salt of the Earth councillor, but it doesn't really mean it. She was independent, basically. And it was kind of like a rebellion against Labour's neglect of the town. She's since distanced herself from me because she said that I was a bigot. And she got everybody else to do that as well in the group. Not everybody, but most people. But then she also left. She fell out with everybody in that group and she left.
I have to say, the little bit I saw of her, she didn't look as if she would be a difficult person to fall out with.
Yeah, it's a fair comment. And this is the thing. It's like we've really learned the hard way. This is why vetting is really important. But it's like the people who are running our borough council, so that more senior level with a lot more responsibility, within your remit, they are just as inept in terms of child safeguarding, and they are just as abusive. They just don't make the mistake of live streaming themselves and doing unhinged things like that, but they're still really making a mess of it.
You're absolutely right. It's not a question just of taking over a council, but you have to have the right people in place. We are currently recruiting to have a real go in Wirral Borough Council in 2027. And last week, in fact, we had 30 potential councillors there, all of whom had half-hour interviews and been vetted. So we knew them, we knew what they were like, we knew of them, and we had training for them last week. And that will carry on now over the next couple of years until we get to the point when the elections will be held. But you're absolutely right; it's important you have the right people.
It is. I mean, the thing is, we did do vetting. We did do interviews with people. We held public meetings so we could get a feeling for people's views on things and if they chimed with what we were about. Everybody was enthusiastic up to the point where Labour started to, and this is just politics, isn't it? But Labour were so threatened by what we were doing that they made a concerted effort to cause division, to sow seeds of doubt. They'd said to these inexperienced new councillors, you should distance yourself from her because she's got these views, and these views are, they're not inclusive, they're hostile to a vulnerable minority. She's bigoted. So, and once they'd said that, I think just their lack of experience, they panicked a bit or something. I don't know, but yeah, we did vet people. It can still go wrong if you vet people, and like I said, our councillors being led by people who have thrown children's safeguarding under the bus. They don't care. They're not interested. They'll go further than that. They'll denigrate and they'll block democracy in order to avoid having to even discuss it. So there's a lot of things going wrong, and it is. That's why it's doubly important, really, that reform get this right in terms of the vetting. It's a lot of people to recruit in a short space of time. We've got to get that right. I think it's good that we're being detailed.
That's right. Yeah. Now, these other independent councillors, what's the general kind of political leaning that they've got? Or is there a political leaning? I'm really trying to get at whether or not it's like.
No, so what we said to people.
Is it likely any of them would join you in jumping ship?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one already has. But I'm not sure if they've made an announcement yet. And there could be more that would potentially. I mean, the thing is, we said to people when we recruited them, it's more about people before politics. So at that level, especially at the town council level, it's about your community. And obviously people bring their values to that. But if your main value is this community's been neglected by Labour, it's very undemocratic. There's too many meetings. The public can't possibly expect it to attend these many meetings. It's too top heavy in terms of the number of paid staff it's got. It doesn't need that many. We can save some money through that. There was very localised things that we were pledging to the public. A new neighbourhood plan, because of the way that a lot of development, housing development had taken place as a result of the last neighbourhood plan not being done in the town's interests, without the infrastructure, to support the town. So there were things like that, but we said it doesn't matter really whether you're left or right or you're not interested in politics at all. Yeah. If your priority is this town and the people here, and the fact that it's been neglected by Labour and you're willing to speak up and hold Labour to account on that, that was really the main thing. And it was great in theory. It was done in a very short space of time. It was just such a rushed campaign. It was phenomenal what we achieved in that time, but it all fell apart as soon as everyone was elected. And we've learned, you learn from these things, don't you? Yeah.
And your local plan.
Yeah. Well, when I say it fell apart, the town council still functions the same as it ever did, because really it's very limited in what those councillors need to do. They could have done amazing things if they'd have had some more guidance and really threw themselves into the pledges that they'd made. But as it's happened, all they've done is they've taken over from Labour.
Yeah. With regard to transgender ideology, there's been quite a lot's happened in the last few years, isn't there? From what was a very fast-moving car, it seems like the wheels have come off in several places. We're going back to I'm talking about stuff like a few years ago, the scandal with the mermaids, whereby you had trustees who were paedophiles and people, all sorts of stuff. And then you had the cash report into the Tavistock clinic. I mean, how is it that people are still seriously considering that it's right to be giving stuff to young girls particularly and telling them to alter their physique in order to change gender?
This hasn't been it hasn't just been a grassroots movement. It feels as if it's been very much an agenda that's been pushed top down by organisations like Stonewall and like Mermaids as well. And they've done it very cleverly. So they've done it in a way that appeals to people's empathy. And I think this is possibly why we've had a surprising number of women kind of campaigning against our own interests and against the interests of our children, because people have believed that it's been it's been tagged onto LGB, so gay and lesbian and bisexual rights. And everybody rightly regarded that as something that was about tolerance, inclusion, respect, and all of that kind of thing. They won their rights, and then there wasn't really anything else for Stonewall and those kinds of organisations to do. And that's when this agenda moved in with all of its money, and Stonewall sold its soul, basically, at tag.
So sorry. What we're saying really is that in order for their own purposes, in order for them to keep on the gravy train which they were on, they were prepared to harm children, which is what effectively they ended up doing.
That's precisely what it is, and they've done it under this banner of inclusion. They've used the flag, the rainbow flag, but obviously they've adapted it to include all of the trans stuff within it. And they've changed our language. Language is a powerful thing. So if you stop using the word transvestite, for example, and you insert this new word, trans, you've kind of legitimized something. You've put a pseudoscience behind something, and you've told everyone you're very, very mean and inclusive, very mean and uninclusive if you are, and you're anti-trans. You're anti-trans if you don't agree there is such a thing as trans. I mean, you've got under that umbrella trans. I don't think there is such a thing as trans. I think there's a fake umbrella that's been created that a lot of people with a lot of different issues have all been pushed underneath that identity. So you've got young girls who hate their bodies, as your previous guest was talking about, young girls who may be lesbian, and they haven't quite come to terms with their feelings. They haven't worked all of that out, so they hate themselves because they don't fit into this pop culture of you get your Botox lips and you filler in your face and your fake eyelashes and all that. If they're not girly girls and they can't fit into that trend, or they're attracted to other girls, they can end up really hating themselves and wishing that they weren't a girl. You've got kids who've got other sort of mental health problems. Maybe they're being bullied, maybe they've had some sexual abuse at home, and they're alienated from their body and their sexed self as a result of that. And this ideology has pounced on those kids and told them if they only took some puberty blockers and associated themselves with this cult, they'd have a new family that will be accepting of them and where they can feel comfortable and okay about themselves. So you've got those kids, you've got the boys who are able to access porn a lot more freely online, and they get pulled down the sissy porn route, which that wouldn't necessarily have happened to them. I've heard from boys who've come out the other end of that, and they feel as if they've been taken on a pathway that wasn't theirs. And they have luckily emerged from it a few years later without having permanently damaged themselves, but not all of those boys are so lucky. And then you've got older men who are fetishists. There's hardly any older women, middle-aged women, that are suddenly realising that they were men all along. Yeah. So all of these different diverse groups are put within one category called trans. It's a false identity that's been created, but the more that we use that word and use that language, the more it solidifies it as a reality, and as a category. The other thing as well, this myth about it being so marginalised and vulnerable, this group of men, particularly these older cross-dressing men, are over 3 times as likely as regular male prisoners to have committed violent and sexual offences and to be in prison for that reason. So it's not true to say that we've got this vulnerable group that we need to protect and treat with kid gloves. It's just not the case. But we've been told this over and over and over and over again. And we've been threatened you can lose your job if you break away from this ideology, if you don't toe the line, if you don't include your pronouns in your email, And this has happened to me, obviously, within the council. I've been vilified to a degree, I feel, vindicated because of the fact we've had the Supreme Court ruling on the Equality Act. It's always been meant to protect us on the basis of sex,
I was going to come to that because 2 or 3 years ago it looked as if everything was going in the trans direction, wasn't it? But that's not been the case. As I say, you had the mermaid scandal, you had the Cass report, and now we've had this Supreme Court ruling. And I have to say, I'm slightly vague as to exactly what it means, because it seems to me that what it's saying is it's saying that there's no alignment between the Gender Recognition Act and the Equality Act, and the two can't fit together. So that's how it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think people were using the Gender Recognition Act to change the meaning of the Equality Act. So within the workplace, they were saying, well, you have to allow men who identify as women into your toilets and changing rooms, because if you don't, you're breaching the Gender Recognition Act. That's the argument that they were making. And what the court has done is, the Supreme Court have made it very clear that in terms of single-sex access and provision of toilets and changing rooms and services like rape support and things like that, that it means biological sex. It means what sex you were born as, not what you identify as. So it means that that gender recognition certificate doesn't allow a free pass for men into women's safe spaces. Yeah.
If they're saying that there's no such thing as other than men and women, which most people will agree with, if they're saying, then the trans gender thing makes no sense, does it?
It doesn't, and I think that we need to come out of the ECHR in order that we can repeal the Gender Recognition Act. I think it's just been another aspect of the ECHR that's been problematic for us nationally, because is it right that we have a legal fiction that a man can become a woman? Does it matter? Of course it matters, because men and women are different from one another, and obviously not every man is a potential, rapist or whatever, but there's a much higher rate of that. We're different from each other, so women are at far more risk from men in general than men are from women. So we have to shape society around that so that women can move about our daily lives. We're never going to be as safe as men. That's never going to happen. There's no legislation in the world that's ever going to create a completely level playing field in terms of women's safety being on a par with men's. But we can try and mitigate that additional risk as much as possible. And that's what the Equality Act is for. That's what it's meant to do. Jen, is it ever morally okay? I don't think it is. Is it ever morally okay to have a law that says it's fine for men to impersonate womanhood from a man's perspective, and we're going to certify that and make it a legitimate thing? If people want to do that, let them do it, as long as it doesn't interfere with other people's lives, but don't legitimise it by creating a whole set of legislation which is a legal fiction, based on the idea that a man can never become a woman or ever really understand what it feels like to be a woman, and vice versa. We have very different experiences. The risk profile we walk around with in our daily lives couldn't be further apart, as men and women. And our roles in life are very different. Our hormonal makeup is very different. We're lying to ourselves if we think anything other than that. And a lot of the men think that they pass as women. Women don't see that. We see a man who's aping his idea. Yeah, they're aping what their perception of womanhood is. So they'll have like strange hand gestures and things. And we're looking like, that's not actually how we behave. It's how that man perceives how we behave, and he's acting. Yeah. So it's the same thing as like with blackface. To me, it's as insulting as blackface, and we've legitimised it in law. And I just think the whole thing, as soon as you start lying to people through the law, you just create a whole world of problems. And that's what we've done. So I think it needs to be repealed now. It's redundant, surely,
But a lot of this stuff begins in schools, doesn't it? The children are, the young girl going through puberty and so on, and confused, is encouraged to consider the transgender as being a possible way out for her. Is there anything in this ruling from the Supreme Court which is going to stop that?
Well, they never should have had unisex toilets. That was always unlawful. So they're going to have to now switch them back, male and female. And by that, yeah, they can't even have male toilets, female toilets, and a shared space where you wash your hands. If they want to have unisex toilets legally, they have always supposed to have had an entirely closed space, floor to ceiling, so there's no gap underneath the door or over the door, and it's got a wash basin contained within it. So you haven't got a shared hand washing space. Unless they're going to create loads and loads of those, they're in breach of the legislation, and they always were. They've been misguided about what the legislation says. The same thing in terms of sports that are for girls, changing spaces that are for girls, dormitories that are for girls if they go off on a school trip.
It was on the radio today that the English Cricket Board, which I like cricket, and the English Cricket Board have decided that no transgender women will be allowed to play in women's cricket. And there's been a number of sports where that's in the last week that they've come out and said this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with the FA, wasn't it, yesterday? They have been dragged kicking and screaming to comply with the law as it always was. It's only because it's been clarified and they now know they're on very dodgy ground legally that they've kicking and screaming agreed to do this. And for me, that's I hope within reform we can take a different approach with this than any other political party has taken, because the very fact that women's safety has been so unimportant, and so many of these organisations that we previously respected have been so reluctant to put those protections back in place, it's almost like a stubbornness. That's revealed to us, really, I think, how very little women are valued and our protection and safety is valued. And we've got to look at our culture. We've got to look at what's gone wrong there for that to have happened, and for it to have been, and for everyone to have been so resistant about putting it right. And the same thing with children. Are we valuing our children? We used to. I'm sure we used to. I'm sure it wasn't always like this, where children fit around our lives as adults, rather than being the main reason, that we organise society in the way that we do is for their benefit, because they're our future and they are children. They're deserving of our protection. They need our protection. So I think we've really lost our way, and these are small things.
I was going to say, we do need to reinforce parents' rights in this respect, because I know at the moment, if my child goes to school and I want to know what they're being taught, because Stonewall, etc., were outside agencies who were coming into the school, they won't even show me the materials because they're copyright, allegedly. So, I mean, that has to be stopped. Parents have to be able to know and understand what their children are being taught.
I'm really concerned about what's happening in schools. So within the last couple of weeks, I've emailed every single school in the borough to ask them about what you see, the council, Cheshire West and Chester Council, and many other councils provide guidance to schools on this trans side of things. They call it trans inclusion, and it's all about inclusion of these kids that are confused, who've been told that they're born in the wrong body, etc. None of it looks at the protection of the girls, or protection of kids who may have feelings of same-sex attraction, or may be having gender confusion because they've got other stuff going on at home. It's really undermined safeguarding within schools, and as you say, it's undermined parents' rights as well. So our guidance in Cheshire West and Chester advises schools that if a child doesn't want to tell their parents that they regard themselves as the opposite sex, the school will consider keeping that from the parents. And that would involve sending home letters in the child's name to the parents, whilst having a different name, the new name, for the child within the school environment. Literally, our guidance from the council to schools advises and normalises that kind of a practice. Also, it says if girls, have a problem with boys in their toilets, consider talking to the girl about her inclusion values and relocating her so that she uses a separate loo, so that boy who says he's gender confused can carry on using the girls' toilets. That's how far down the road it's gone. So I've written to all of our schools, secondary level and primary, asked them if they've had sight of this guidance, because the council's refused to pull it. I've raised it so many times and they've refused to review that guidance, despite the CAS review, and even beyond. But they have. So the schools have replied. The first few replied to me before one of those head teachers had contacted the council, and the council had said, you need to close it down. Tell her that she's not. Tell her that you've not seen it, and that therefore there's nothing to discuss. So I got some honest responses from some of the head teachers while their guard was down, and one of those responses says, in this school we are very proud of our record on inclusion, and we do we've made sure that all of our toilets are unisex, and we do not recognise boys and girls. It literally says we do not recognise boys and girls in this school. So I sometimes get criticised because I sound like a stuck record on these issues. I do, and I hate the sound of my own voice because I've talked about it that much. It's almost as if I've got no other interests. But before this happened, I had loads of political interests, and I took the council to task on loads of different things. But this has really has been my obsession, because people don't realise how bad it is. This has happened under the radar. It's so widespread and it's so deeply rooted now within the culture within schools. That's damaging our kids the longer it goes on. And this government and the previous government have not got to grips with it. Children aren't regarded as important. Women aren't regarded as important. And that's something that I feel reform will approach differently. It's not, I don't feel as if it's going to be seen as a side issue that's not real politics or really important. How we protect our women and kids, how we protect our freedom of speech, is the bedrock of the fabric of a healthy society, as far as I'm concerned.
Family is right up front in reform's agenda, as you know, and I think that's absolutely right. Yep. Look, I don't think I think you've done magnificently in resisting this horrible ideology, and I presume this Pride thing in Windsor is going on again this year, is it?
It is. We've managed to get some concessions on that, so they are rebooking that act, but he's agreed to tone down his outfit. I don't know if that stall is going to make another appearance. I'm not sure. They've put in place a draft. They've now ratified their safeguarding policy, which they didn't have before. They've put in place a draft code of conduct for Pride, but I've challenged that because they've just pinched it from London Pride and they've not really addressed the things that have gone wrong in their own Pride. I think it needs to say more about protecting kids. Well, it doesn't say anything about protecting kids. It needs to say about freedom of speech and not pushing ideology. I think it needs to also talk about protecting everybody, because I was mischaracterized as someone who was there protesting and causing trouble. I wasn't. I just attended. I observed. I gathered information. I actually had someone hold a big, tall bloke hold a sign over my head which said Mandy Clare hates trans people, and pointing to me saying that she hates trans people, and the police didn't do anything about that. And the security, when I approached them and asked them if they could help with this guy, said that they were there to protect the act on the stage. So the guy who's gyrating around in front of kids on the stage has dedicated security just for him. And meanwhile, I'm there with this aggressive, intimidating guy stalking me around the event, and that isn't covered in their code of conduct. I'm so unpopular for saying it. They'd love it to just all go away, but they need to stop. They need to stop doing this. So in the meantime, that leaves me stuck like a stuck record. It's not ideal.
Well, I mean, the good news is that from my perspective, this trans agenda has been like a tide which has come in, but I think it's started to go out now. And I think that, as I say, some of the things that have been happening recently, you're starting to see it going. And it's a little bit like when Nicola Sturgeon was cornered and asked, about the Isla Graham going into a women's prison, and a convicted rapist, etc. And eventually, that really did in the end do for Sturgeon. It brought her down. And I think that the more that people, and it's the same with the net zero and so on, when people have ideologies which just don't bear meeting with reality, eventually they will fall. And I get the impression that you're winning, that that we won't have this problem for too much longer.
I hope not. I mean, I think Starmer's response to it has been absolutely disgraceful. The man doesn't seem to be ever able to apologise for anything or admit that he's got anything wrong. And this is not a small thing to get wrong. It's catastrophic for half of our adult population. Yeah. Absolutely, he should have. Yeah. She's deserving of an apology, if anybody is. It's horrible. You are in a very exposed position. If you've got some kind of a political platform, people can throw stones, and she really was hounded out of that position. And you have to be thick-skinned up to a point, but she was actually put in danger and wasn't able to safely attend her party's conference, and he's been proven wrong. And this is the thing within Cheshire West as well. It's one thing to say you're not holding your breath for an apology. I'm not. I don't think that the leader of Cheshire West will ever apologise for that guidance and the stubborn refusal to withdraw that guidance when challenged on it. I don't think they're ever going to apologise for that. But should they apologise? Yes, they absolutely should. How do we have any faith in any integrity of people in leadership positions if they can get something like so basic as that wrong, with such catastrophic impacts on children, on women, on free speech, on democracy, you know, really basic tenets of our civilization, basically, and not say, okay, we made a mistake, we got carried along, that was silly. So you have to be able to do that, I think, in a leadership. You have to be big enough to be able to do that in a leadership position. And if you can't do that, I mean, the right thing to do is to resign, isn't it, if you've got something as badly wrong as that? That's the honourable thing to do.
Great. Well, we've taken a fairly deep dive into that, I think. I found it very interesting, and I hope our viewers will have as well. But what I wanted to do today was to leave with a smile on our faces, because we won the Runcorn by-election yesterday. And as we speak, there are hundreds and hundreds of Reform councillors being elected up and down the country. It's been a great day, hasn't it?
We've got control of Stafford Council, Durham Council and Lincolnshire Council. And we won every by-election in the council seats where Starmer blocked democracy. And Sarah's got in Runcorn as our first female MP. Mega. Good stuff. Great. Couldn't be much better, really.
Excellent. Well, let's leave it on that happy note. Thanks very much indeed for being on.
Cheers, Ken. Thank you.